Hello, my dear students. Welcome back. So, this is my new video in our educational series. We all know that we are working hard for our upcoming class 12th board exams, subject history. And my agenda is that all the students should get excellent marks. And here I am presenting important questions chapter wise. So, in my previous episodes, we can see we have covered chapter number 1 and 2 of history, class 12th, and today I'm taking third chapter, that is your kinship caste and class, where the main source, the entire information, the facts given the chapter are taken from the greatest epic of the world, that is Mahabharata. So let us begin. So here comes the first question. All right, so as I've told you, I have covered all the important chapters here, all the important questions. So this set of questions, you will be finding them very helpful. All right, and here I move on to the first question. The Dharmasutra and Dharmashastra also contain rules about the ideal occupations of the four categories of varnas. Critically examine the statement. So it's a very important question. So coming on to the answer. So let's understand what were the Dharmashastra and Dharmasutra. They were basically written down. They were basically the rules and regulations which were written down for the society as the society was becoming more and more complex. We take Vedas to be the fountain source of everything, right? The fountain source of entire information, knowledge comes from Vedas. And Dharma Shastra, Dharma Sutra, these were again the information, rules and regulations contained. They were definitely taken from Vedas and they were all written down by the Brahmins who had set up the rules regulations for the society. So according to them, when we talk about the ideal occupations, they were categorized into four categories known as Varn. So there are four Varn. So first one, Brahmin, second Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and fourth Shudras. So Brahmins were supposed to teach and study Vedas. They could perform sacrifices and get sacrifices performed, and they give and receive gifts. Kshatriyas, they were engaged in warfare, they protected people, administered justice, they had the right to collect tax, study the Vedas, get sacrifices performed, and make gifts. Vaishyas, they were assigned to the duty that they can study the Vedas, they get sacrifices performed, and make gifts as the Kshatriyas. And in addition, they were expected to engage in agriculture, pastoralism, and trade. So agriculture, farming, pastoralism, and trade. That was the occupation. The occupation of Kshatriyas was to engage in warfare, kings and all. Brahmins, their work was to teach, to preach. Shudras, the occupation of Shudras was to serve the other three Varnas. Brahmins dues. Now, this is again a very important question here, that what were the strategies used by the Brahmins to enforce the rules laid down in Dharmashastra? Dharmashastra mainly written down for the kings, and it was expected from the kings that he should make sure that these rules are followed. So the first was asserting that one order was of divine origin. That is a Brahmanical theory, right? The divine theory of origin. That these different four varnas, they have originated from different parts of Lord Brahma, right? Advised kings to ensure that these norms were followed by the subjects and attempted to persuade people that their status was determined by birth. So this was done. These policies were used by Brahmins to enforce the rules written down in Dharmashastra. Now moving on to the next question. State whether gender differences were really important in the early societies from 600 BCE to 600 CE. Gender differences. Definitely they were, and still we can find gender differences prevalent in our country. So gender differences were really important. We can see that the system which still exists in India, that is a patriarchal form of society, it was there during ancient time also. Women, they did not have a share, they did not get the right to property in their father's property, and social differences were there. So patrilineal system. Patrilineal means when we are drawing the lineage from the father's side, that is known as patrilineal. And matrilineal is when we draw the lineage from mother's side. So in ancient society, patrilineal society of succession was followed. Like for example, the son of the king will become the next king, according to which the paternal state was divided equally among sons after the death of the parents. Daughters, no. Sons were considered important for the continuity of the family and had share in paternal estate. Women, they could not claim anything, right? Women were not the part of succession, right? So they could not claim for the share in the property or in the resources. Women were allowed only to retain the gifts they received on the occasion of their marriages as Stridhan. But Manusmriti warned women against holding family property without the husband's permission. So when we talk about an ancient time and even the years which followed, so women did not, it was not considered to be correct, morally correct, ethically correct that the women should hold some wealth without the information of the husband, right? Social differences, gender differences between men and women sharpened due to unethical and biased rules. Men enjoyed a higher status and women, and this led to domination of men both in power and in household. So this is one of the reason that why we are still following patriarchal system in our society. So the next is explain how will you prove that text of Mahabharata was a dynamic one. Dynamic is something which is, changing over the period of time and which is evolving. The more appropriate word will be evolving. Okay. So yes, it has evolved. It is not static. And in today's era also, you'll find that there are so many themes. There are so many performances, paintings, drawings, right? Stories, drama based on the central story, main story of Mahabharata. So yes, it is a dynamic one, following other points. It's written in many languages. So the growth of Mahabharata did not stop with the composition of Sanskrit version. Originally, it was written in Sanskrit, but today you will find that this Mahabharata, this grand epic, is now translated into almost all the languages of the world, right? And it is still an ongoing process of dialogues between people, communities, and those who wrote the texts. Several stories, as it incorporated several stories that originated in different regions, the Mahabharata became an epic text. Wide range of themes, exactly as I told you earlier also, that still till date, even after thousands of years, you will find that many plays, dance, narratives, paintings, they have the theme of Mahabharata. So that's why we can say that Mahabharata is a dynamic text. Examine the evidences found by the archaeologist B.B.Lal after excavation at a village named Hastinapur in Meerut, Uttar Pradesh. This question came in the year 2017 also. So let's move on to the answer. So evidences which were found by B.B.Lal, the archaeologist in this village of Hastinapur, they are as houses in the second phase had no definite plan. Between 12th to 7th century BC, walls of mud and mud bricks were duly encountered. For the third phase, houses, they were built of mud bricks as well as burnt bricks, both type of houses you can find. Brick drains were also used for draining out refuse water, while terracotta ring wells were used, all right, they were used both as wells as well as drainage pits. Fine. So they were terracotta rings were made, the terracotta rings were there, and these rings, they were placed one above the other, right, for using them as drainage pits or as the ring wells. Now moving on to the next question. The Mahabharata is an invaluable source available to historians to study about the social practices in early society. Then it can be like in this way also, it's a colossal epic to understand social behavior. And then this is what a famous historian of Indian literature, Maurice Winternet, wrote about Mahabharata. Just because the Mahabharata represents more than an entire literature, it contains so much and so many kinds of things. It gives us an insight into the most profound depths of the soul of the Indian folk discussed. So all three questions, they're basically pointing towards the same thing, that Mahabharata provides us with lot of information related to how social life was in ancient India. Moving on to the answer. So I'll just say that whenever you are writing about Mahabharata and the social life, you must write down the name of this person, Maurice Winternet. So he said that Mahabharata is not just production of poetry, it is not a piece of literature with 1,10,000 verses, right? But this epic is full of various examples, which is depicting different, aspects of Indian life. It has been written in simple Sanskrit and therefore widely understood. Language and content. Mahabharata has been written in Sanskrit, right? And it is much simpler than Vedas or Prashastis. Historians they classify the content of Mahabharata under two headings. Alright, the first part that contains the stories. It is known as narrative. And second talks about the social norms, prescriptions, the values. It is known as didactic section. So Mahabharata has two parts, narrative and didactic. Many historians believe that Mahabharata was meant to be dramatic. It's a moving story, that the didactic portions were probably added later, like the part of Bhagavad Gita. Authors and dates. So, like this Mahabharata, it has evolved over a period of 1,000 years. So, like we get several views about the authorship of Mahabharata, that it is not the work of a single author. It is believed that originally the story was written by the charioteer bards known as sutas. So sutas were the people who used to take the chariot. All right, okay, and they were the poets. So they used to accompany the kings and other people on the battlefield. They used to watch whatever was taking place and then they were writing it down. Fine. So whatever they saw, they were writing it down. So they were the bards, right? The poets, and we call them as sutas. Then from the 5th century, it's believed that Brahmins, they took over the story and they kept on writing about it. Another phase is the composition of the text between 200 BCE and 200 CE. This was a time when came the worshipping of Lord Vishnu, and like Krishna was identified as one of the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, right? We talk about Vishnu and his the 10 avatars, Dasha avatar. Okay, so between 200 and 400 CE, large didactic sections resembling the Manusmriti were added. So this is all about the development of Mahabharata. Then when we talk about the social and cultural conditions, right? So already we know that it was a patriarchal form of society, right? Women, they were not given those rights, okay? And then yes, there were gender differences. Mahabharata is also important from the historical point of view. Okay, we come to know about so many social, cultural, economic condition of later Vedic period. Epic had a deep impact on Indian life, social, political, cultural, moral, spiritual, everything you will find. Thus, Morris Wintonet's writes, just because the Mahabharata represents more than an entire literature and contains so much and so many kind of things. It gives us an insight into the most profound depths of the soul of Indian folk, right? So it is an advice from my side that whenever you are writing about Mahabharata and social life, you must quote the lines which are written by Morris Wintonitz. So moving on to the next question now. Here comes question number 6. Discuss whether Mahabharata could have been the work of a single author. So we know that Mahabharata has evolved over the period of thousands of years, so it could not be the work of single author. Okay, so originally it is believed that it was composed by the chariot bards known as Sutas. Alright, so they used to accompany the Kshatriyas, the warriors, to the battlefield, and they composed poems celebrating their victories and other achievements. And they were circulated orally in the beginning. From the 5th century onward, the Brahmins, they took over the story and they continued writing. Okay, this was a time when the chiefdoms like Kurus, Panchals, they were becoming the kingdoms. Another phase in the composition was Mahabharata, which was between 200 BCE and 200 CE, when the Lord Vishnu, his incarnation, right, Krishna, all right, became a very important integral part, fine, of Indian folklore. Then between 200 and 400 CE, large didactic section resembling Manusmriti were added. Okay. Then these interpolations made the Mahabharata an epic consisting of nearly 1 lakh verses. So it is a very enormous composition. Now, according to mythology, it is believed that a sage named Vyas, he dictated the entire text of Mahabharata to Lord Ganesha, and Lord Ganesha wrote it down. So it is according to a myth. Modern historians, they believe the text was neither authored in a specific period nor it was the work of a single author, right? Because it's a very bulky literature and it is believed it took thousands of years for the compilation of Mahabharata. Now describe the social implications of access to resource during Mahabharata period. Okay, and then the gender differences. Definitely the gender differences, they had a great say on the this resources, all right, keeping resources with yourself, holding resources. So we need to give reasons also for this answer. So gender inequality was definitely there, patriarchal society was there, right? So women, they had a respectable place in society, and mainly they were respected for their motherhood. But their status was inferior as compared to men. Sons were considered important for the continuity of the patronage. Women were viewed rather differently. They had no claims over the resources of the family, but marrying them into the families outside the kin was considered desirable. That is the exogamy when we talk about gotra. So this system is known as exogamy. Patrilineal, yes, patriarchal society, lineage derived from father's side. Okay, this system was followed by most of the ruling dynasties. Although there were various practices, sometimes there were no sons, then brothers they used to succeed. Sometimes other kinsmen also claimed the throne. In very exceptional circumstances, we have also seen, all right, Prabhavati Gupta, okay, the daughter of Chandragupta Gupta, all right, she exercised power. So that is an exceptional case, and you must write. Okay, patrilineal was not unique to ruling families. It is evident in mantras and ritual texts such as Rigved. It is possible that these attitudes were shared by wealthy men who used to claim high status. Women's right to property, they were not given any right to property. They had access only and only to Stridhan, which they received at the time of their marriages. Okay, during Kanyadan, whatever they received as gift from their father, that was the only thing which they could keep with themselves. All right, and only women had the right over Stridhan, and if she doesn't want, she cannot give it to the husband, and she could pass that Stridhan to her children. As per Manusmriti, the paternal state was to be divided equally among sons after the death of the parents, with a special share for the eldest son. Women were not given any share in the state. So this rules more or less it goes same in our country, but now in our country women are given the right to property. Okay. Now moving on to the next, that is the concept of Stridhan. This I have already explained you. Okay, what is Stridhan? And yes, women can keep Stridhan with themselves. And according to Manusmriti, it was considered wrong if a woman is holding family's property without the permission of the husband. She could not keep anything valuable with herself. Difference in excess of resources. Yes, social differences were sharpened because of differences in excess of resources. So the higher one, they had the access towards resources, and the lower ones did not. Many texts suggest that upper class women have access to resources, but money, cattle were generally controlled by men. Vakata queen Prabhavati Gupta was a rich woman. All right. So Prabhavati Gupta stands as an exception. Now moving on to question number 8. Describe the contribution of V.S. Sukthankar in reconstructing social history through the critical edition of Mahabharata. So V.S. Sukthankar along with his team, he prepared the critical edition of Mahabharata. And let me tell you that it took almost 47 years, all right, for the team to complete the critical edition, right? So V.S. Sukthankar, an Indian scholar of Sanskrit literature, initiated the task of collecting critical editions of Mahabharata. All right, and he has collected the facts from different parts of the country. Team compared verses from each manuscript and selected the verses that appeared common. All right, and it is published in almost 13,000 pages. So the critical edition of Mahabharata has 13,000 pages, and it took 47 years. Found regional variations in regional versions. Definitely, when we talk about the storyline, when we talk about different incidents of Mahabharata, so we will find the regional variations. All right, according to the region, yes, there were variations, but yes, the central story remains same. Okay, these variations were documented in footnotes and appendices to the main text. More than half of the 13,000 pages of text are devoted to these variations. So there were many, many variations. Variations shaped early and later social society through local ideas and practices. From the works in Pali, Prakrit, and Tamil, it was indicated that ideas contained in normative Sanskrit text were on the whole recognized and as authoritative. Then examples from Mahabharata. Families are based on kinfolk, all right, means following the bloodline. Idea of patrilineal was important. Rules related to marriage, polygamy, polyandry, exogamy, and endogamy, And Mahabharata reinforced that Varna system was of divine origin. Divine origin is that those four Varna, they have originated from different parts of Lord Brahma, right? Like the Brahmins, they have evolved from the head of Lord Brahma, the Kshatriyas from the arms, right? And then the Vaishyas from the stomach area, and the Shudras from the feet. This is what is the theory of divine origin of one system. Now, question number 9. The Mahabharata is a good source to study the kinship value of ancient times. So, justify the statement, all right, with suitable arguments. So, let's come to the social life. When we talk about the social life, family is the first thing. So, definitely, families, joint family system was there in a country. So, family, that is known as kul. Okay, so it was larger part of family defined as relatives, kinfolk. Familial ties were often regarded as natural based on blood. Sometimes societies they regard cousins as blood relations, and some societies they do not. So that is the variation. Mahabharata was a story of kinship relations. We know it. The central story is revolving around the Kauravas and the Pandavas. It narrated a feud. Feud means the fight over land and power between two groups of cousins. This is the central story. The central theme of Mahabharata, feud over land and power between two groups of cousins, the Kauravas and Pandavas, who belonged to a single ruling family of Kurus. Both had different sets of ideas which shaped their actions and led to changes in their attitude towards life. So as we think, we become, right? So it was same with Kauravas and Pandavas. Patrilineal means tracing descent from father to son, grandson, and so on. And patrilineal was practiced in our country. We find that most of families' inheritance was passed on only to sons. Although there were some variations. Sometimes when there were no sons, the the position went on to the next brother. Okay, kinsmen they claimed the throne even. An exception is Prabhavati Gupta. Petrolini, it was not unique to ruling families. All right, so even in the different mantras given in Rigved, you will find, and these attitudes were shared by wealthy men and those who claimed high status, including the Brahmins. Now, the rules of marriage. So there were 4 types of marriages and 8 forms of marriages. Fine. So we know endogamy, exogamy. So exogamy is marrying outside the kin. You need to marry outside Gotra. The people belonging to the same Gotra, they could not marry. Polygamy was also practiced. Polygamy is the practice when a man has several wives. Like Arjuna had more than one woman. This is the example of polygamy. Polyandry, when a woman she has several husbands. Example being Draupadi. Then Kanyadan, the young girls and women belonging to families that claimed high status. They were very often carefully regulated to ensure that they were married at the right time to the right person. Kanyadan Stridhan. Hence, it is suitable to give insight into family, marriage, and kinship values, which depicted through the episodes of Mahabharata. Now, moving on to the next question. Describe the familial ties and rules of marriage as per the Brahmanical prescription during this period, right? So, this is something which we have covered earlier also. So, now it is given all together. So, familial ties during 600 BCE. Okay, patrilineal system was there, how the lineage was drawn, right? Patriarchal form of society. Then the distribution of the wealth, right to inheritance was given only to the sons, not to the daughters. Okay, and then high status was with the people belonging to the high varna, the first two varna, the third varna. Shudras, they belong to the lowest category, so they had the lowest status. Rules of marriages we know. We have the polygamy, polyandry, exogamy, endogamy, right? Then the 8 forms of marriages. Out of 8 forms, 4 were legal, 4 were considered to be illegal, right? At the same time, marrying into families outside the kin was considered desirable. Girls were married at the right time to the right person. Dharmashastra and Dharmasutra, they talk about the 8 forms of marriages. Okay, so this we have already discussed, and this is a one question given together, right? 2 questions given together in the form of one question. Now, this is class a very important question, that what are the features of Gotra? Okay, so before you write down the features of Gotra, you must write down what is Gotra also. What evidences do we find from the Satavahana inscription regarding the inheritance of Gotra? Explain. Because Satavahans are also exceptions to so many things. For example, the Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas were the warriors. And now the kings were considered to be from Kshatriya family only. But Satvahans, in spite of being Brahmins, they became rulers. So Satvahans, they stand as exceptions for many cases, right? So the second case we'll just go through when we come to this answer. So what is Gotra? Vedic seer. So each Gotra was named after a Vedic seer, and it is believed that the people who belong to same Gotra, they were regarded as his descendants. Okay, right? Like Bhardwaj is there. Okay, fine. So that is a Gotra. Rules of Gotra. Two rules about Gotra are particularly important. So let me tell you here, suppose if you are saying Gotra, Bhardwaj is your Gotra. So that means it is believed that your family and you are a descendant belonging to Vedic, that is the seer Bhardwaj, in this way. The rules of Gotra, two rules were there, fine. Women were expected to give up the Gotra of their father at the time of marriage and to adopt their husband's Gotra. Members of same Gotra could not marry. So in the case of Gotra, exogamy is to be practiced. The evidence that we get from the Satavahan inscription regarding the inheritance of Gotra are family ties. Inscriptions provided information which allows historians to get the family ties, including marriages. Now you'll find that in Satavahan families, the women, they continued with the Gotra of their father. They did not change. So that's an exception. Same Gotra, women also, they had also belonged to same Gotra, which was against the concept of exogamy. Fine. So the women, all right, they used to marry the person with the same Gotra. Right. So this is the exception that we find amongst the Satvahans. Now moving on to the next question, right? That is, what element do historians consider while they analyze text? Explain this with reference to Mahabharata. Mahabharata is considered as one of the richest texts of subcontinent. What elements do historians consider? So this question basically what it is asking us is that, like whenever the historians, they have to study, all right, they have to study when they get any literary text. So when they go through it, that what are the factors they need to keep in mind, all right, before they come to any gist, before they analyze something. So what are the points they need to keep into mind? So these are the 5 things that they need to keep in their mind. The language, the kind of text, who's the author, the audience, date, place, when was it written, where was it written, and the content. So when we talk about the language, they examine whether text is written in Pali, Prakrit, or in Tamil language. Right? Languages that were probably used by the ordinary people, and Sanskrit that was exclusively and used by the priest and the elites. Okay. Then the kind of text, they also considered the kind of text they are referring to, whether it is a mantra, all right, that was chanted during the ritual practices, stories, that's a story, all right, that's in the form of a poem, what it is. It's in the form of drama. Author and audience, besides, they also try to find out about the authors, their perspective, their idea, and the audience. All right, authors keep the interest of their audience in their mind when they're composing their work. Date and place, they also try and ascertain the possible date of the composition, of compilation, all right, of the text. So it helps them, okay, to place the text in the right context, fine, and then to draw a comparison also with the present world. So this is how they do it. Content, after they have considered the above factors, they are in a better position to analyze the content of the text and to arrive to the conclusion and to the understanding of that fact. This has been a particularly difficult task for a text as complex as the Mahabharata. So, dear students, these are some of the important questions, all right, okay, from the chapter 3, class 12 history, kinship, caste and class. So one important point which I would like to tell you all whenever you are attempting a paper is that whenever you read the question, please try to understand what the question is expecting. Okay, what are the things that that particular question is demanding, and please satisfy all those demands, especially when we are talking about 8 marks questions. Draw the flow charts, draw small mind maps kind of thing, right, when you are attempting 8 marks answers, so that you are not missing any point, right? So with this, we have come to an end of today's episode. Thank you so much, my dear students, for watching this video. So here we take a deep dive into understanding the important questions that may come from chapter number 3. So keep watching. So do share, like, and subscribe. We are also waiting for your valuable comments, and they really help us to explore more and to present the best material, the best study material that we can give you. The suggestions, they're always welcome. Thank you once again, and all the best for your upcoming board exams. Thank you.
Keep supporting.